Live. Hello, people. Hello, America. So this is regarding what I caught them doing with the campuses, and they use confessions regarding where they are aware each branch of government, each overt criminal enterprise, each private one, self-valued originally and still, and then one's not realized, juxtaposed. All counters to that in collusion. Hundreds of nations shared here and there, and something fluent through that. Not just their grouped identities, also fluent through that, per nature. But then further, per nature, the identity of a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise and or a breaching method, if you won't accept that, syntactically. And if you won't accept that syntactically, there are proofs that you should. Also inherent with your defenses of why you would deem it more practical not to accept that as a syntactical answer /S to why and how. You know, the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Really what is involvements with everything. So this, I forgot what I titled this video. Oh, this is about the Wethersfield police and state police and the police of other cities and the FBI have roles originally and still as evidence, as victims, but as victim predators involved with an identity theft, fraud, slander method. And it is recorded that shows how they are motivated to blame the real causes tied to the one cause by the breaching method that design causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and rolls with those delusions, because then everyone pretending other, because they had to hide from each other because of all that was sustained as that. In other words, everyone would hurt each other as fact cheap needs because the laws had it that way. The laws had they were putting up witch trials. They were putting up slavery, but it was being put up through other people. It was being put up through England in defenses of sciences individually grouped in together. They don't even remember their own history of English. America was already had entrenched before our founding parents were born. What they left us evidence to speak about and to understand, where and how they didn't have free speech and that other force pretended. So they wanted us to understand first for American history, where and how they had to counter extort the other founders, and to get up for that the Constitution will be out unabridged, to get that quality of fact cheap nature allowed, where a person could show where and how the experts and the interbranch, where our inclusion with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and this is relevant because it's differentially relevant, and where it is manifest is where we are making and have been making fact treatments. So they already painted themselves into corners, charging criminal enterprises and or people for relativity to criminal insidiousness, for example. One aspect of what they can't help charging them for, the way they're charging things. Where and how that criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and of negative treatments, which are simultaneously identity treatments. That was part of the breaching method, to have entertained those so it couldn't be entertained and afford at any location. Those distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous identities of sophistication, the executive branch, the political branch, and the judicial branch. They wouldn't be able to afford, their relativity to that which is replacing, and having replaced the short words and revelations. and how they get away with it. They got away with it by pretending passions and emotions towards people's names, making them good or bad, leaving out what is actually recorded. The worst predators since founding were generated by that breaching method that had left employed because our founders didn't have means to get anyone, not even one person, to a position of quality of fact treatment nature, capable of explaining for them what they left to explain for them about how and why we're supposed to get the Constitution unabridged. How and why. Nature bound the identities of other natures here, other nations here, and our identity there. All exceptions in exception nature and demonstration of the same thing as the species body is. Where one goes, species goes. Return from space, all learn. Vaccine is all at once, we'll turn. We fight together and we all win, even if we all win. So we are on a semi-ancient trap, actively denatured since semi-ancient times. It moves your minds, not your soul. All exceptions, exception nature, and demonstration of that can't stop the soul's course. Can reinvent the course, which changes the relativity of our words, like value, and increasingly separates it from the significance of its course by what is hyper invisible but still discernible, distinctly from the invisible but still discernible. And that and how it is actually functioning. Greater than and more finite than math, while it has math value. Then distinctly, then non-distinctly too. Ooh. So in other words, Republic was revealed. Still left, forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, taking shock and awe. Every individual, every single individual, prevented the quality of fact, treatment nature in short words and uses of hyper revelations, or hyper evident, what is hyper evidential. That at each age of fact, treatment nature, sickly, distinctly, effectively having kept how sickly, non-distinctly, not just from being discerned, but that increasingly being and having been self-valued. People pretending that they speak passions and emotions honestly. It is recorded how those defenses of honest are only defenses of motivations needing to be pretended, because it is what's used remotely. See, it was a fact treatment nature breaching method. It's an agenda not coming after money, not coming after just the identity theft, just the identity fraud, just the slanders. It's coming after the styles of roles with it. It's coming after, it's a soul theft, soul slavery. So when in the little rep guys and friends counter obfuscated cartoon episode with the projects with Sepp and Reeves in front of a big tall building /S, and Gonzalez is in that episode too with some guys in the courtyard there. As America is actually manifest, as is actually needed to be discerned for uses by what is hyper evidential, which is also uses by where and how what is hyper evidential is and has been prevented free speech, and how that has been gotten away with. And while simultaneously other needs to be pretended by selves and by groups about raise of people, even if they like each other or not, in collusion with the breaching method. So it has remote needs by that too. And preemptively, it was shown needs to do this. Complete remote possession of each political party that came before us. Forced self-value because of locations, areas, and states. No matter how powerful a leader could get, they're going to be above locations, areas, and states, forcing them to already having entertained. They came through those campuses too, from the best campus, whatever people agree or not, their version of the best campus to the worst campus. They have things that they have evidence that they are self-valuing that array because they're still in collusion together against what is actually evidentially recorded. And that's relevant, for example, to styles that pretend they don't see evidence when people speak things that are counter to the evidences as presented by books, that are simultaneously subjects treatments and logic treatments that are reliant upon theory. So there's no way to debate them without pointing out their physical delusions. Now, they don't understand physical delusions, so they have to rely on others to think for themselves. And those experts are still themselves recording delusions wrought while supposed to be the experts on such, and criminally foreign influenced, in that being and having been used, where and how there is offensive data, evidence, even perception, and identity reception, racketeering worse than war crimes. For example, leaving out slavery because you guys are not capable yet of dealing with how to discern the predicate acts delivery system relevant to slavery, which requires discerning how slavery as an identity of volume, which is, and then the additional ones associated with this, with that method. Slavery and the torture is additional to that. And the identity theft method, the identity fraud method, and the identity slander method is additional to that. It was a method /S. Now, how they blamed it on how they measured and maintained our own then and now, effectively still too, blaming other things, others, ourselves for what the breaching method caused, color used in the law, rolls with it. See, it was measuring, maintaining, everyone doing that at locations. It was sophistication here. Slavery was entrenched north and south before our founding parents were even born. Vaccines, it's torn. Until we win, species body, trade, then I'll begin to win. Then species moves. Then we have the means like that, better than free, to make better than paradise, that they could draw animated movies that have to go then defend their positive and negative treatments, pretend they could make an opinion or a conviction or speak about what is practical reason, used Immanuel Kant's phrase, or speak for the value of sequence and or the value of Native Americans and or of emotions. Emotions are about the simultaneous / hyper simultaneous, but that requires a quality of fact treatment nature. For example, time treatments that are offensively prevented and self-valued having been prevented by courts increasingly that have to know that that they can't afford that quality of time treatment towards subjects, and so they can't afford counters to exploitations of exceptions and exception nature being and having been set up. So there are some state police with and there are FBI as ones that are involved with various natures of courts from Connecticut that are interstates, like with Vermont people. And it's relevant to people that were involved with Mike Roberts and Eric Jensen and Joe DeMoro and Ray Reynolds, also on off Middlesex Community College in Connecticut, intercities, roles with identity thefts and frauds with investigators on off campuses, with multi-front, with positions in the campuses also where they have placements in classes and people that don't even know each other, and collusion behind people's backs, and having coordinated that between public schools and private schools. And they did this as adults through the kids. And so they kept their family members and themselves as adults now need to self-value, where and how the short words and means by what is hyper-evidential was replaced with others and pretended legitimate. And that was simultaneously through criminal foreign influences that are from off campuses demonstrated, recorded, confessed, while others pretended through the method /s used by the syntax nature of the overt criminal enterprises, each age of their family members, the private ones, the interbranch ones, individually grouped and then further together. Methods individual that the types of executive police forms have, like switching names, but distinctly. Uses of it, methods by that. For example, while they're switching names, they're in the background fabricating more things into databases. Uses by pretended needs for the integrity. For people to have faith and we shouldn't have faith in it. See, that needs to self-value. That craziness at the Capitol, including the counters to it, as fact human nature. When we are calm, they prevent us from free speech, sickly distinctly, from when we are in locations calm, but everyone around us is not. All exceptions, exception nature, and demonstration, the same thing. They don't have nets. All that money that they wasted, all that theater they wasted. Well, hyper theater could have had its free speech. Can't be invented. Can't be acted. Can't be hid. That's why they made the phenomena of exceptions where it would be self-valued, hid, having been hid. And shock and awe don't realize how significant that is. Because we have had means by. And what is hyper-evidential, offensively prevented, per that identity theft /fraud /slander method, worse than just slavery, against every single colonist, Native American, and then further as against Americans, even further time and positions, quality of fact, positions upon identity impositions upon the uses of the hyper-evidential needed by and as the souls of the human species volume as the Native Americans. We are forced, individual, grouped, and together, tactical ulterior from the native way. The one everyone's trying to remember. Through a culture that they know is being lied about by other countries, individually grouped and together. Self-value rolls with it too. Because in other words, the function by difference that is simultaneously self-valued by everyone at the same time distinctly, but it's self-valued that way. In other words, when we value what the species science properly, the difference between what is Native American and American that's not Native American becomes increasingly self-valued that way by the Native Americans and by ourselves, because it's a means to discern if the Constitution, therefore our nature's voice, is formally being and having been unabridged, been abridged. The voice of the Republic, the engineering of its computer, its database relationship, its grounding by our voice as earth, law, not alone. The rest of the nature has voices, but they have no criminal foreign influences, those voices. Only humanity has had criminally foreign influenced positive and negative treatments and voices as nature, as criminal insidiousness nature, as nature itself is demonstrating. It will not be the exceptions we could make. We could be other systems, but it will demonstrate the one. Boxing is fun, one way alone. I'll trade. So, in other words, we have to get through where and how they made each age a fake integrity, reliant upon styles of positive and negative treatments that are criminally foreign influence. The neighbors of Eric Jensen on Dearborn Street in Newington, Connecticut, are also people involved with Wethersfield police and the other officer, Jerry Miller. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed he's involved with people who've been planting evidences by spreading lies, fact, cheaply nature oriented on each side of my house, and by making confessions and statements. So they have a domain family. These are also people on and off the buildings next to the state capitol through time involved with identity thefts and frauds and slanders, as the people on and off the universities and colleges involved with also planting through time identity thefts and frauds, fake illusions, per uses of instances everyone missed originally installed into databases. One thing that it is regarding how the suburbs are tactically denatured to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and overtly / insidiously simultaneously everywhere. So therefore, even easier to discern how overtly / insidiously at New York City, all exceptions and exception nature engineered to hide that, to keep it blamed on other things, others, or selves, to keep that self-defended by keeping tactically criminally foreign influenced premises treatments self-valued, by keeping tactically criminally foreign influenced positive negative treatments, identity treatments, A therefore B. Oh, it's bullying. Bullying. He died in 1864, the Civil War, and treatments of the Civil War are recorded effectively being and having been valued, self-valued, being and having been criminally foreign influenced, having been treated through roles with the tactically criminally foreign influenced premises treatments, identity treatments. Our founders left us to demonstrate that method of hyper identity theft / fraud / slander, worse than war crimes against every single person, sickly distinctly, and how they force the finite, measured and maintained, self-valued by everyone. Prevented free speech offensively, even preemptively, how they do and did this. So there's a woman, I don't know her name, when she was a younger girl one time. She was influenced by people, men and women associated with Tom Perone and his sister and family to roles with identity theft, fraud, slander. They trick kids to locations, and they lie about what led up to that and what came after that, and their nature of relationships to themselves and with others, complete strangers. These are people on off the buildings next to the state capitol in Hartford, associated with the names involved with this through time. So in other words, there's a Mark Violet and his brother Mike Violet, who also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Also Jonathan Maiano. So these are people involved with various natures of courts, prosecutors, judges, and their family members. Also with people that are being and having been criminally foreign influenced with overt criminal enterprises, involved with sequence shifts with them, identity thefts and frauds. Two, sequence shifts where they have narratives where they locked and painted themselves and others into corners. People with the intelligence community by pretending they didn't realize they were planting evidences, and that's what's actually recorded when they were influencing people to be in the locations that they had me and other people, specifically for identity theft, fraud, slanders, where the evidence perception bodies are themselves criminally foreign influence victims, but victim predators. They're preventing the method effectively prevents us from telling about how they are victims, because they're self-valuing how they are victims, because they have already been victim predators. They're only defending qualities of fact treatment nature, premises treatments, sequence treatments, for example, identity treatments that can't be defended and afford a voice that would use what is hyper evidential properly. So when we have subjects treatments by experts, they leave out all the recorded influences over their subjects treatments, specifically to keep them from being used as evidences, while simultaneously, increasingly, what is hyper evidential is prevented uses. So all the colonists, Native Americans, colonists, everyone A through Z was sickly distinctly, worse than extorted. If they tried to speak up against that, so the laws were against. You didn't have right to fight for it. And where there were exceptions, that too was employed to keep measured and maintained. Roles with the breaching method having set up those exceptions and needing it through other motivations, nature's needs, interest apparent, by everyone blamed on other things other than themselves, because we have these short words and the revelations and means by these hyper evidential constants that are also simultaneously differentially variable. However, where and how they are increasingly relevant to where and how nature needs us to be speaking about how there is a scientifically discernible hyper invisible identity of hyper simultaneous, inseparable from all subjects, inseparable from all subjects individually grouped and together. Its identity of relationship to itself is also where and how increasingly valuable it is actually discernible. And the value of that is one of the ways it is invisible but still discernible. And further distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneously, how it is hyper invisible but still discernible. The same way, simultaneously. This, in other words, is in summary of what English was revealed to teach where and how we have to perfect. And other languages were revealed to teach this too. We are a lot reliant upon the differences of the better than living relationship that the identities of sounds have together, the English language and other languages at the same time. English and Arabic have a grouped relationship to each other the same way humanity's volume is locations, areas, ages, sexes, pigments, grouped to show something. It is species identity of volume, body of volume, invisible but still discernible. No. / hyper invisible but still discernible. And it is made up of every single individual. Only an individual. Only an individual can deal with the finite, can sense, perceive the finite. So before the World Trade Center attack, there were roles with what kept self-value used remotely, the pseudo-sophistication of countries A1 through Z, however many countries there are. And territories, all exception, nature, and demonstration of the same thing. For example, regarding the breaching methods, having not just separated everyone from the native pure system, measuring and maintaining everyone, blaming how nature and what nature demonstrates this, how it demonstrates this. Everyone is increasingly valuing those demonstrations blamed on other things, others, and or on selves. Because nature only demonstrates through positive value nature progressions, acts, and nature is means out of nowhere, including especially relevant to and hyper relevant to where and how we are quality by as fact cheaping nature. That's more that before someone could have the sophistication to speak for the values of litigation or of legislation, they need to be able to speak for the values of nature, natural law. Yeah. See, they can't speak for that, so they can't counter. So they can't tell through what is need to be countered. American history has to be told through that, as told, as having been told, incapable of defending its treatments, its opinions and convictions and premises, treatments, fact, treatment, nature, qualities, and of affording discerned how actually what is recorded is that and how our founding parents had to counter extort the other founding parents and had to make fake narratives. And how, in other words, how to interpret what the records say they said and what they actually said and say. See Marbury versus Madison. See the Constitution unabridged. See the ways they pretended it was about. They pretended lies about their motivations, and the victims trying to counter their motivations regarding Jim Crow laws, for example, regarding slavery, left entrenched, north and south, fact, cheaping nature oriented, denied, because it took the locations' names, north and south, the founders' counter extortion method, and made them fight with themselves. Thank God we have the Republic that Republicans brought, or what led up to the Republicans as they're capable of being, but are not. And what led up to Democrats, what evolved to countering what they can't be. But as counters, they can't be it too, because they are not. Lucy, 1989, Reader's Digest article regarding how the Clinton administration's information relevant to also people on off the state judicial branch offices and houses next to it associated with the Fianza family and ones I don't know the names of, associated with all kinds of roles with abuses of boys and girls sickly distinctly, roles with wire crimes and mail crimes, identity thefts and frauds. They forced a girl formally to self-value roles with the intelligence community and overt criminal enterprises and interbranch families associated with a middle school, when I was in middle school, right before I could go to a high school. They wanted me to go into a summer school class involved with, and I never saw my neighbor Ray Colo on my middle school the whole time. He was in other classes on another floor of the middle school or whatever. Never saw him around the high school. They put him in my middle school class, and a summer school class. Never had a class with him in middle school. Never had a class with him in grammar school. He came into my grammar school when he was in fourth grade. He came onto my street. This is one of the people involved with Wethersfield police over like 10 months ago. And then, and before that, they've been with wire crimes and confessions over the phone because they painted fake conversations with me as a kid and then as an adult. And they pretend recorded at locations and in the branch that people are uncooperative with them because they're involved with identity thefts and frauds offensively. So where we were told to use the right to, where we're supposed to have the right to remain innocent, to be assumed innocent until proven guilty. They have been offensively preventing this by stacking fabricated evidence against us, roles and acts at locations with the foreign and domestic and that fluent through it, and that effective uses of where and of how identities individually grouped together as our own and others. They've been pretending to be our identities through contrast, simultaneously needing to pretend other and getting away with it by pretending, roles legitimately regarding, quote, sense and sensibilities, unquote, and people's motivations that they're trying to establish as logic, as they're needing people to call them liars, so they can pretend it's personal, rather than deal with what is actually recorded and hyper recorded. Again, they pretend they don't understand evidences, so we can't leave out the roles as victim predators with the crime methods since before witch trials in Wethersfield, Connecticut. And why and how the witch trials at place is right next to where George Washington had to come right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War and counter-extort. The people that left involved North and South sickly distinctly with slavery. So now also sickly non-distinctly. To understand what slavery was about, one obviously has to examine how sickly distinctly and non-distinctly slavery was in the North and in the South. One has to deal with the value of what is simultaneous / hyper-simultaneous. To being an individual is being an identity of simultaneous nature. And simultaneously, it is being an identity of sequence nature, relevant to where and how we are the species, body, of volume, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, and where and how that is differentially, but constantly increasingly valued to all three sides of it differentially, relative to all three sides as in only increasing, that's exceptions in exception nature. In other words, this is where being variable is only increasing as volume. It can't help it relative to where and how. Phenomena associated with phenomenon of the hyper generation, that which generated matter and is generating matter, and has the increasing value of that to come, also here now, relevant to what is constant and variable simultaneously, and how it is variable simultaneously, and how that is differentially constantly increasing. So this is what it sounds like too, not by accident, trying to explain how computers work properly. The identity of value progression has an identity of conjunction to all spaces and their uses of what is positive or negative, and means by discernment of, it means by the hyper invisible and invisible but still discernible with that. Correlation nature is actually inherent, active, and progressive means. See, those are three orders. There are two different orders of sequence nature / simultaneous nature. One before the order of the finite, while as the value of the order of the finite, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, while as itself. The hyper-simultaneous is how we discern the hyper-simultaneous, invisible, the hyper-invisible, but still discernible. See, so when you hear emotions and passions and opinions of political leaders and of people in parallel to that, with exceptions and exception nature, where and how, for example, their voice is still in the hands, their identity and their fact sheet nature and their means by and needs by exceptions and exception nature, the relevance of that to their, words, opinion. When they say fake news is is not just one evidence, a whole bunch of evidences and of identities of relativity to legal cases where the outcome is regardless. There have been the wrong outcomes in cases because the defendants have been hiding roles, even with the courts and police forms, and overt criminalism, where and how that's mixed. They've been hiding roles with all that relevant to where and how we study what is tactical data reception, racketeering, war crimes. Simultaneously, distinctly, it is evidence reception crimes, worse than war crimes, roles, mass, identity theft, fraud, slander, method, roles, mass, styles of that self-value and pretending others. So to counter this, we need to have force. If people have differences, we have to have a means calmly to counter this with our voices. But they've been preventing writing. One of the ways they've been getting away with it is per what I caught them using the child campuses for, and simultaneously, sickly, distinctly, the other natures of campuses, including fire and medical campuses, as the people involved with recorded remote uses, criminally foreign influence uses of colleges and universities, in collusion with uses of child campuses. And now the collusions with this and the motivations for roles with that are maintained per uses of locations, off campuses, off the private database relationships, off the interbranch ones too, off the locations associated with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and that insidiousness inherent to the fact-sheeting styles A through B, blaming and having blamed the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and roles with them, with things like slavery. Blame the other things others and ourselves, and not self-value, since our country's inception, left by our founders to be told properly, as has not happened yet, too, again. Attend, be legion, hear your name, be legion. game. So, in other words, there's a former Mayor Gold, and there's an O'Brien family of brothers who involved spreading lies and delusions with a C.M. Faglione family, and with people with New Britain Superior Court associated, like with Brian Silver. I never had a conversation with him in my life. Never had a word of conversation with my, and a number of people named Brendan Leahy involved with various natures of courts and medical families that are also involved with it personally together, and within as people involved interbranch and military tied to them, also involved with overt criminal enterprises, plural, and the private ones. And roles kept used remotely like that, kept needing to hide the same sequence shit, finite, active, progressive, and live progressions per uses of roles with uses of other people's names in context where you can't get in other words, where the men and women recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed to people relevant to what caused slavery, that they self-value. The real causes of it blamed on other things, others themselves. Because of their roles with locations, areas, and states, interbranch families, all exception tied to them, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, how they're kept needing to hide the same sequence, yet finite, aggressive lies, identity theft, fraud, slander roles, method. And again, needed to be perceived by others, their motivations. They painted themselves needing to pretend motivations in certain contexts and times. They have to pretend this is natural reaction of themselves. Literally, they painted themselves into corners with identity thefts and frauds and slanders, in collusion with the worst patients and criminals, and against innocent people. And against those worst patients and criminals. They didn't do everything exactly the way they said it. They pretend passions and emotions against the people while they're planting little tricks in there. Also because of how they kept all that everyone is used remotely. In other words, there's a certain kind of victim that you don't forgive them. But if you don't have forgiveness with treatment of it, you're a tool of what has complete remote slavery possession of the person at the end of the whip. With the roles with slavery, where torture is simultaneous. It's a method. To discern that, you have to use what is invisible but discernible. To speak about what the subject's value, subject treatment's values. In other words, we're dealing with the invisible but still discernible when we speak. I'll whisper, creak, leak, I'll train. So the election lie is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, and involved with where they have little boys and girls manifest in defenses of sense and sensibilities that would not be had they not been child abused the way I caught them being and having been child abused at the same campuses since I was a kid. Because this is also progressive uses of roles with illusions stuck into databases and to reactions to the times, sense and sensibilities uses where confessed, recorded, demonstrated, confirmed, all these different ways. What is hyper evidentially given to kids is other than is pretended by the jobs. Like there's a Laura Saunders involved with Institute of Living on the campus of Hartford Hospital, who is also involved with this Leahy family, involved on and off New Britain Superior Court and other courts, involved with federal crimes with state police families and people associated with that working at their offices, like and Eric Jensen's father and his grandparents involved with people on Dearborn Street in Newington, and houses near there and businesses near there associated with the Spadas family involved with identity thefts and frauds and slanders, and where they use, where the interbranches manifest that way, where they've been planting evidences with where they enable them to have relationships and to meet others, and unobstructed without having, and even they help give them lies and stuff like that to make them like them, give them, specifically so they can spread, specifically for where and how there is remote uses of the sense and sensibilities of people, roles with falsified police reports, and where and how the roles are interbranch, but they are also private tied to that, and there's also overt criminal enterprises and private ones involved with those names interbranch. And those names are every single name. See, we have to have a quality of fact, cheap in nature, afforded at all locations to counter this. And everyone denying it. They want and need to get caught, about things. They want and need to pretend emotions and passions and motivations other than our actual. See, this breaching method knew that its motivations relevant to that which held together can be discerned, could be discerned. So I keep that everyone qualities of action, motivation, nature, needs, interest as styles of identity theft, fraud, slander, method, roles as methods, motivations, nature, needs, interest, kept needing to hide the same sequence of finite aggressive lies as the breaching method, as victim predators, as knaves, when they have to get, they don't have infrastructure to counter diseases and things that we saw we had means to see coming. All exceptions, exception nature, they value means classified, not declassified, to pretend, to hide behind. In other words, to use the truths for lies. In other words, we're not supposed to tell on the secret things that the government does, whatever. They said, even if they made up what Fauci was involved with, those databases Dr. Fauci's have been involved with, and the professionals, they're involved with physical delusions, recorded clear as day. They're involved with various natures of courts and their family members stacking fake things in the databases, and more and more, those are relevant to where and how they have various natures of courts involved with these, with the corruption with them, and kept needing to hide that per self-value roles with what was already at all locations, all kinds of collusions with it, per uses of lie progressions from the campuses. So I don't know this. I don't even know the name of that girl who's now a woman associated with this Tom Perone. They timed with people associated on and off the buildings next to the Hartford Capitol, the Capitol in Hartford, rolls years ago, with houses in my area involved with the state police and F.B.I. and the Wethersfield police and a police chief years ago too. I don't know his name. And there might have been more than one of them, like with the transition of that too. I don't know who the new police chief is, but there was a police chief Cintron through years, involved also with there's a Mendez police forms family involved down on Fox Connecticut News as one of the buildings, the locations, and the buildings next to it are involved, names involved with predicate acts with WFSB investigators. Also as former director, their roles with former director of the F.B.I. and other directors. Now, on interstates, the corruption of the F.B.I. has been collusion with, mental health care corruption in those databases and natures of experts with physical delusions and theories juxtaposed, where they can't defend that on paper. So they increasingly self-value means and needs shown how they could pretend other and get away with it. For example, like hiding and plotting and ignoring voices and pretending passions and emotions in the background that they couldn't pretend on paper. Increasingly, therefore, in collusion with courts and cases and depositions, and leading up to that, and uses of locations and crime scenes that are also involved with remote uses of defenses of them and themselves screening themselves per uses of the big lie as a phrase, not used politically alone. In other words, used to maintain politics, criminally foreign influence, and tactically delusions raw, specifically for those natures of fake defenses of peace that are offensively preventing us calm speech, while simultaneously preventing us from being livid, where and how all we have to do is get real livid, real fast, real quick, because everyone has these physical delusions and has opinions and convictions and motivations by their own motivations they're trying to establish as evidences. The breaching method measures and maintains countries A through Z on suburbs that are tactically denatured to cause negative value nature progressions, action natures overtly / insidiously, let alone that can't even be accepted. What is actually recorded, the value of New York City, cities across the world. It's a trap only capable of unfolding, only capable of having had to fight with each other to make it worse, to do damage control, and then to defend that while not fathoming simultaneously defenses of that each other against each other as what can't defend itself and us from what used that remotely originally still. It was sophistication here since before our founding parents were born. It was the sophistication that took the actual memory and understanding of England's history, re-engineered it, fit roles, self-value with criminally foreign influence database relationships, pseudo-integrity of mental health care expertise and of English expertise, know how the predicate of English is valued simultaneously, distinctly from the predicate act of the law, but also non-distinctly. So America begins, once we tell our history, through those narratives, motivations, natures, needs, interests, thinking with the way they think. Physical delusion, all kinds of, I'll show you how to think. Just get me a response. See Renaissance. So Connecticut News has roles with a whole bunch of people that were involved with a whole bunch of different natures of child abuse when I was a kid, and men and women that do things like put people getting involved with use arrests and their roles with crime scenes and crimes to paint fake relationships between the people with those arrests, put fake things in databases, attach people to fake locations, fake roles with happenings, fake sides. So they paint arrays of opinions tied to issues that make it look like there's a difference that are used to self-value sequence shifts. So I don't know the name of the family across the street from, the families across the street from, and around the house of where Tim O'Brien, Andrew O'Brien, and Dennis O'Brien, their mother used to live. But they were involved also with Ian and people. I don't know, I ever had a conversation with him. I don't know if that was actually him on Twitter, but these are also people involved with a principal upskirt nature and with more upskirts and other natures of digital crimes and of sexual, medical, and drugs and medicines crimes, also with overt criminal enterprises, the same ones with the doctors with their kids involved, attaching themselves and their kids to fake ties and communications with other people and their family members, and themselves about fake common communications about their families. All exceptions, exception, nature, and demonstration, the same thing. And they make those exceptions too, to pretend when we're speaking about one person there was no communications with at all. they're trying, they're trying to speak about things that happened totally different times. Like, in other words, 3 different times for little group times. The whole first time I was there, and the whole other times, I never had communications with these um, doctors in the Leahy family and the foreign ones, and this Dingleberry involved with various natures of organized crime with kids on my street, and or through people tied to the people on my street, involved with the Wethersfield police, switching names, forging names, falsified police reports, identity theft, fraud, slanders. They have roles on and off Trinity College with family members of a. They said they're family members of a Charlie Bowes, and people associated with Chris Walters and his mother. That as strangers sought me out to confess, demonstrate, confirm, record roles of various natures of different kinds of drugs. With that Chris Walters, through time, every once in a while, as a stranger, he would come make confessions tied to me, tied to his roles with. There's something to do with an O'Brien family and a family that lives near them, that they said had something to do with the buildings downtown Hartford and the Sharkey's place, and their roles with identity thefts and frauds with people at St. Trinity College and CCSU, with that place, and the 3 spots at the end of the Burlington Turnpike, with the names that got involved with untimely deaths, timed on Trinity College, even if made up. Roles with uses of that for other natures, roles with other natures of predicate acts on and off Trinity College through time, other natures of identity theft, frauds, and slanders instances relevant, and their narratives. But see, we need to get them on paper. And they're pretending we need to sue for rights because they're leaving out the court's roles with them. The courts are the ones that brought up these people's names and themselves. So this Tom Perone and Danielle Perone, they have, and I don't know, their families have roles with the buildings next to Fox News. They have a religious location next to it, and they have people that live on and off Two-Red Highway that are involved on off the state judicial branch offices, on off the state prison offices, with people on off Two-Red Highway, where it runs into Hangdog Lane and to the Burlington Turnpike before the heart of Hartford, but we're at the Wethersfield, Newington side. So it's something to do with that. People confess, demonstrated. There's connections between people that offensively confess, demonstrated, recorded, confirmed roles to all these different natures of confessions as strangers of different natures. They have connections between themselves, and they brought up those locations, like where there's a Lowe's now, and since before it was Lowe's, and the shopping centers across the street from it are involved with policing families. It has something to do with a Chet Casper. I don't know his sister's name. I don't know his wife's name is. But in other words, they're involved on Facebook with some child sexual offenders and identity thefts and frauds from people who weren't even in classes with me, with a Debbie Gold and a former Mayor Gold and other mayors involved with both political parties used remotely, and further the FBI lawyers, personal and together, involved with corruption on off Wethersfield town offices, and their roles with Korean families that are involved with, like Taekwondo places, where their students have been involved with identity thefts and frauds and slanders. And then they may try to make exceptions. They time when you're going to come around a corner, and they have someone from another grade, like one kid with a notepad. I forgot his name though. Daryl Chandler. I don't know his sister's name, but they're involved with people that are involved with with exploiting, how they're involved with predicate acts on identity thefts, fraud, slanders. They tried to pretend they knew me when I was a kid, with people that are also putting fake things in databases. And my principals will tell you this. They already put it on record. In other words, they have roles forging and switching names on campuses and off campuses. They've been roles with falsified police reports, with stacking lies with the news media, roles with how the news media has like types of jobs like weather reporters, with their narrative, with where and how they've been with the campuses, involved with police forms, involved with drugs and medicines, crimes with them, including doctors of mental health, foreign and domestic, on and off the locations next to WFSB, also involved with them with wire crime methods with their phones, relative to them preventing counters to their wire crimes with their news articles, fabricated emails, and with other Connecticut news locations. So this is how they use locations and the identities of people A through Z fake. So evidences were and are how a whole bunch of evidences and their roles with criminally foreign influenced town offices across the country and across the globe. They are relevant to where and how manifest the suburbs are designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts and natures, and roles with the torture and slavery, and with the effectively set up and then exploited exceptions and exception nature of our founding parents. They did not have free speech, even our founding parents. And this is also, too, having been perfected, they denatured the ground. They denatured where everyone could get food. Now they have to hunt for it and or way more, rather than cultivating what causes positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Rather than controlling, have ponds with beautiful fish, the ones they like to eat. Rather than having, brooks, all kind of crawfish. Rather than having, the spot, these animals are going to come running through here. You want to pick one? All fresh, all no chemicals around. Vaccine is found to fight, but stay the rules. See, no one has figured out how to fight without cheating, without valuing cheating locations and cheaters, having pretended they didn't realize that, while increasingly getting away with it relevant to the slanders and the identity thefts and frauds from people from other classrooms, coordinating illusions to pretend other and exceptions to pretend other at locations. So the three corners at the side near the principal child abuser's campus and houses next to it, there's a Pierce family with fire departments. I don't know them. There's a Matt Pierce. I never had a problem with him. I passed him a hello. That's it. You know what I mean? Basic. That's it. Now he has friends of his, and there's a doctor it might be his mother, who's one of who has doctors and their patients, and or they also have roles with plainclothes police officers and their acting coaches that are involved with drugs and medicines crimes, where they have crime methods roles where they use the right to lie, where they didn't and don't have the right to lie. These are also ones roles with recorded remote criminally forward influenced uses of Congress, and they're pretending it's only about politics. They're pretending that the outcomes of cases are their motivations for saying things about the president and his evidences treatments and other people's relative to it. In other words, when they say there were no evidences of elections crimes, there are recorded evidences, but they're preventing all that is actually recorded. Just because a case proves that doesn't mean they looked at all the evidence is right, and doesn't mean that they're taking the time to make exceptions and to explain how their take on exception nature. So everyone's going to increasingly value how time is used simultaneously, too fast, too slow, together on forever nature, which an identity is. So where someone would have to go and say, okay, these are laws, they're hurting these Americans A through Z sickly distinctly. Boom, before they're done, they're getting hurt. You know what I'm saying? In that trap. It's syntax oriented. We have to have mandated law followed. The people that responded to In other words, even Twitter is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved forcing roles. And don't take it personal. Twitter, they need you to pretend it's personal because they need your motivations to hide what's actually recorded. They have you making opinions where you don't know all the variables. You're forcing measure and exploiting or hurting roles with, you're forcing equality of fact, human nature on presidents / chiefs that can't be entertained, and them or ourselves defended sickly distinctly, multi-front, by the same singular method. You exploiting how nature has a multi-front relationship to itself, just like all the multi-front parts of your body have a relationship to your body's complete, actually how it is, value / value progression, identity. All right. Betrayal tribes. Species body longs its legion. Tribes. Exception, nature. So history has to be told. Ancient history, semi-ancient history, modern history. Here. She means appear. Vaccines. I teach you things but long. The Forever's campus calls you all back home. To dust it off. In other words, so there are election crime methods already being and having been perfected. Criminally foreign influence statutes and precedents, self-valued by everyone. Just forced equality of fact, human nature. In other words, so specific news predicate acts are hard to counter also because of their relevance to their paralleled roles with natures of the same names involved intercities, people tied to them intercities. But as ones involved criminally foreign influences that were kids. So there are other names, other motivations involved with themselves, with the instances they've been setting up to pretend other with. So there's an Eric Oliveri, and there was a Joshua Stryker, and there are a whole bunch of people in Matt Olson and Eric Olson involved with identity thefts and frauds with state police, interstates, distinctly, non-distinctly, and something with F.B.I. and with various natures of overt criminal enterprises and of private ones, and of people associated like pilots, people associated with the Navy, people associated with where Russians and Americans are shared here as pseudo-peace, as enemies, where the only real peace is because the only way they get along as humanity is where and how they blame the real causes of negative value nature, progressive acts and natures on other things, others ourselves here and there, shared together. Russians and Americans have roles with psychology, physical delusions, and criminally foreign influenced crime methods with the courts and the police forms and the politics, political locations. For example, they have theories that are also delusions wrought and criminally foreign influence regarding people's mental health and regarding people's identities. They have identity theft, fraud, slander, fake conversations with little kids and their family members through time, and then against them as adults too. And they've been exploiting this at locations. So there are a whole bunch of people next to the Wethersfield High School through time, and that are also involved further with the locations next to the child campuses. They have connections, and they have recorded uses of them through time. And these are also people that will tell you that it was adults involved with their family members that influenced them. But they will also tell you, it will show you what is actually recorded. Their families also have roles criminally foreign influenced. So the branches of government are criminally foreign influenced distinctly from everyone else in their sources. So we're in how it appears they're differentially criminally foreign influenced. It is is increasingly there's complete possession of it, even where and how it's not their fault, and it is actually other sources of criminal foreign influences, other roles with it, other bodies outside the courts and the police forms and the judicial, and the political that they represent, while representing themselves. Individually grouped and together, they have methods. They have fact, human nature methods manifest that are predicate acts delivery system methods that are self-valued by themselves, relevant to what they've been doing to keep the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures in New York City and in suburbs throughout the country, let alone New York City, to keep them blamed on other things others themselves, to keep that self then defended. The qualities of fact, human nature, increasingly incapable of understanding and of using that which is hyper-evidential, that which is actually correlation nature, that inherent active and progressive means. That is that which is actually the worth of other people's names and titles and locations and selves. America, species, body, a volume, yeah, name, entrenched. Hello. Thank you. No one's here, so I'm saying, someone please show this to someone YouTube and Twitter. Please fix that, because there are more people involved with leaders of the kids with upskirt natures and other natures of digital crimes and uses of it by a method to highest life progressions, I call it them, with foreign and domestic medical families involved with the principal upskirt nature. Further, see the picture of a girl with a skirt from behind sent to me on Twitter before the Ian, who said he was F.B.I. put it. So his neighbors are involved with identity thefts and frauds. Also with a Kerr family tied to those with the Perron family, that with the identity thefts and frauds. They made a fake party and they to pretend ties to me through other people I don't know the names of, as the interbranch and military, an exception tied to the interbranch, people involved with the Department of Motor Vehicles, Department of Transportation, involved with identity thefts and frauds, uses of juxtaposed natures of child abuse roles, and within as families and interbranch, all private and stuff, and kept by worse criminally foreign, but used remotely at elderly homes, not by accident. Those same ones, people are involved with the probate courts associated with those locations, with medicines, treatments, and responses, things where that's involved, and with the policing of that, and the policing and the checking of that. They're also involved with uses of those locations and the locations next to it, where they have roles with the identity thefts and frauds, and people that a whole bunch of names involved with predicate acts on my street through time with identity thefts and frauds instances. Also, where they have people just make statements to strangers, time. Also with like this Dillon family, a detective Dillon years ago, and a guy who said it was his partner in a speech class I had. Not to me personally, he said it from in the class. So I had 2 speech classes, and those teachers personally had people that from off my class, involved them with on and off my class, predicate acts through time connected, and identity thefts and frauds instances roles, including falsified police reports roles, and way worse, fake news, wire crimes, and stuff like that. Roles on with houses next to the state judicial branch offices and next to the state prison offices. They're tied to Joe DeMauro and his girlfriend, and how they put Joe DeMauro, his girlfriend, and they were sharing his girlfriend, him and a Mike Kerr, and their brothers are involved with their families also with policing of the shopping centers, involved with identity thefts and frauds through time, like on off Town Line Drive and on off locations in Newington, which are also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by a whole bunch of people with names having been involved with identity thefts and frauds instances relevant to predicate acts, roles, and illusions on off Trinity College that were planted, and on off the Trinity College that were planted by people with connections that they do and or don't know simultaneously. There are a whole bunch of connections to it. It's involved with methods. Former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on Racketeering Influence and Corrupted Organization Act. Him and his co-defendants involved with depositions with Hartford courts. I caught them, the Hartford courts and New Britain Superior Court and New Britain courts and other Connecticut courts and their family members involved with planting evidences at locations before that, during that, and since, as their roles also leading up to the World Trade Center attack. In that context, proven after it, post-dated documents have been presented to the Ninth Circuit Court from inside the court. So it has something to do with people. These are also the people that have roles with some Korean family. Some Korean men and women pretended to know, or a Korean man pretended to know me with a person who ran a taekwondo gym. He told the Joe DeMoro that he wanted to meet me. He was involved with people from his taekwondo class that weren't even in my grade, that were involved planting, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by my principles and stuff like that. In another context, though, they were involved with the narratives where they were putting fake things in databases and remotely involved uses of black family members involved with identity thefts and frauds that I don't even know the names of. And the name Bay Rock was brought up because of locations next to the 3 spots at the end of the Burlington Turnpike involved with people with identity thefts and frauds, with people tied to them on and off my street since I was a kid. These are people with the Wethersfield police chief from 1 years ago, involved also with this O'Brien family, with Central Connecticut State University, involved with predicate acts, roles, and methods on and off child campuses, at private schools, and regular kids' campuses, and with this Leahy family, other doctors, and the nurses tied to them, and to their roles with the fire departments, and their roles with uses of all kinds of their roles legally to get away with various natures of bad things. And their roles with only good things, and collusion, criminal and senseless natures of positive and negative treatments, and of identity treatment simultaneously. Violent treatments the same way. Many pray. So one can't speak about value properly until identity is spoken about properly. The American identity is self-valued, being and having been criminally foreign influenced, relative to where and how those short words and what is hyper-evidential is prevented free speech. They call us names. We try to use what is hyper-evidential. They call your president names. Twitter is involved with sequence shifting, pretending passions and emotions as a nature actually recorded that can't defend itself and discern through, in other words, how criminal and seditious natures of positive and negative treatments originally still were criminally legalized, and how that is exploited, used remotely. All that is uncharged and formally and informally and hyper worse in collusion with illusion, collusion simultaneously. So in other words, offensively, they need to pretend they don't realize means to discern this. So the news is pretending they don't see evidence but they know they attach me to fake words, other people to fake words, and about the World Trade Center, as their roles with doing that at the time to force sexual, medical, and judicial abuses, and roles with untimely deaths, and violence roles, and uses of Facebook with the principal child abusers campus, involved with the rest of the upskirts natures that he was involved with too, on and off. The families involved with shopping centers and the policing through time, Town Line Drive shopping centers, and then they have the unions and the policing of their fact sheeting nature. Everyone's involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders that all go back to their connections with people, making instances between kids completely fake. And ones like this Eric Mendez, I never saw him on my middle school campus ever. Never saw him on a grammar school campus ever. They had one exception, real fast on a middle school campus. And then I remembered him. He became, and then they made another exception. They make exception because they had to hide lie progressions years after at the next campus, which I never saw him on at the Wethersfield High School either. Never saw him around there either. They made one exception with this Eric Mendez outside of the campus. In other words, he's involved with identity thefts and frauds from behind my back. These Mendez police, wire crimes, mail crimes, fake words with me, as on off the Wethersfield Police Department, distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneously, on off the New Britain Superior Court. Falsified police reports, roles with them with child upskirt natures, drugs and medicines cliques with this Leahy family, and Anthony Yagman involved with also with crimes with his mother, with people at the corner of Town Line Drive and Southstein Highway. A whole bunch of people involved as the ones involved with those three spots next to the spots next to WFSB, and with the spots in Rocky Hill, and the spots next to Fox Connecticut News in Hartford. They have Fox Student News being used to measure and maintain, roles with this self-value, or they hurt roles with hurting the other kids. So fix the fake news and report the news properly, and don't pretend it's personal too. You guys have to pretend more and more passions and emotions at locations, and you have to lie about your motivation, which are employed involved with the gun threats and things like that too, not just rape threats and uses of Facebook pages of the campuses and the interbranch and collusion with it, including Harvard Hospital has doctors and judges that are roles with upskirt natures and some drugs and medicines crimes cliques, involved also with overt criminal enterprises with other natures of drugs and medicines crime cliques too, involved with their identity theft, fraud, slanders, speaking fake things to the records. Let's get them on paper now. Make sure I get a response. Make sure Wethersfield parents are some of the parents were confess to the other parents, because we have the interbranch juxtaposed with the parents, and they're pretending those are identities that are having legitimately defended themselves per having pretended legitimate readings of statutes and precedents. They left out exceptions and exception nature to where they have the right to lie, where they have the need to lie. In other words, they have something to do with how there are Korean families involved with identity thefts and frauds with people from my school who went out of their way to stand in front of me and pretend they know me. I never had a class with them, like those people involved with the food bag and these taekwondo places on Route 3 involved with the judicial branch and the executive branch, on and off Trinity College, on and off Harvard Hospital, on and off campuses, on and off the roles with the principal child abusers campus, and with locations in Middletown involved with this through time. They have locations intercity. They have something to do with Westbrook involved with this Ray Reynolds in the intelligence community, and CNN's roles with evidences crimes against the people that work for Donald Trump and the people that worked for other presidents, but they also had their information and sources in collusion with them. So the intelligence community on and off Central Connecticut State University and Trinity College, They did good recording, confessing, demonstrating, and confirmed. They have roles with predicate acts law, with child offenders, other natures of organized crime. And where they did better, the courts have roles with this too, though, and the police forms. But they don't want those roles. And, where there are exceptions, exception nature, the sequence shifts at locations roles will overcome that. Otherwise, the judge, the corruption of each branch members and hierarchy will just continue. Complete remote possession of it. When they try to speak for positive and they speak about jobs, they leave out exceptions and exception nature. They cannot speak for identity so many ways. You don't not one person, A through Z. So they also recorded, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They use what people say online criminally in cases, and they change it because they don't even when not in cases too. They're fabricating things into databases. They're replacing what's actually recorded over Facebook with fabricated audio and video. Has something to do with their roles with Afghanistan, also involved with the families involved down off Trinity College with identity thefts and frauds with them, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and various natures of federal criminals tied to and as former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin, his lawyer, Robert Cheverit, and Thaddeus Grabowski, one of the ones on off Fox Connecticut News, involved with people with these two Mendez police in Hartford that are involved also on off the Wethersfield Police Department, involved with wire crimes with Fox Connecticut News and with WFSB, WTNH, New Britain Herald, and other Connecticut news locations involved with federal crimes, identity thefts and frauds instances, uses of the reporters, their family members, their classmates, because of this intercampuses method /S. So people from Central Connecticut State University with the military too, they have some kind of roles with the military with identity thefts and frauds with people all along that route from Wethersfield to CCSU in New Britain, Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, and on off Paul Minifort Drive and Central Connecticut State University. Our people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with identity thefts and frauds, intercities, on off child campuses, and then connected uses of them behind people's backs at progressively connected campuses, including if people go interstates, how they have that involved. There's something involved with Rhode Island campuses and narratives tied to me where they influenced a whole bunch of people, like with the Zano family and with a Jonathan Wayano, involved with the Cololo family, involved with wire crimes, and people on off the state judicial branch offices, involved with finances and their extended family members, and girlfriends of them, involved with mayors and their families, involved with Rhode Island, and Rhode Island, other interstates, as people involved with the state police of Vermont, Rhode Island, and Connecticut, as their roles with forensics locations. For example, state police maintain roles inside a Whiting's forensics location, which is involved with their patients and criminals before they got caught with various natures of child abuse and drugs crimes and physical delusions since founding. Now, they're also involved with the same house /S, involved with the names they brought up in confessions, and the roles with evidence as crimes, federal rules of evidence as crimes. Hiding this from Judge Napolitano, there are proofs that they have the sense and sensibilities of people constantly at locations, constantly criminally foreign influenced all different ways. Like with, to relative, check their sense and sensibilities when they pretend to be about blaming Republicans or Democrats with passions, emotions, and hate, because they know they are fake sides together. They are in arrays and collusion and the exception nature they value too, because this is a method that's preventing how we are supposed to use calm speech. We're supposed to be able to, and is preventing how we're supposed to raise our voices and get mad about things. They're preventing it offensively. They're even having they're knowing that little kids are going to have to tell on things, and they're pretending into databases they told on them wrong, specifically rolls with a method that keeps wasting the time of people when they need to go to counter things, and they put more people in names, in collusion with it. Name stacking is one of the things involved with the child abuses and elderly abuses that kept it furthered where it wouldn't have, because we're just going to enable what our nature can see. Actually, we have to see how what is actually recorded standing, pretending it's honest or it can speak for integrity, is in the way of integrity. Politics was never the values it pretended to be. Individual finite truths will lead. The rest recede. Believe. So Wethersfield, Connecticut parents, hear me. Can you hear me? Wethersfield, Connecticut parents, students of Wethersfield, Connecticut, students of Connecticut schools. I found interbranch preventing me free speech since I was a kid, preventing writing. I'm going to show you what I caught them doing. Pretending they don't realize. You're going to see forging names, switching names. They're stacking the databases with fake things. They're acting instances off the campuses tied to that. Their motivations came from off campuses too. We're going to observe this. We can observe this. There are election crimes, and the election crime rolls, they know they're recorded. They were shown needs to hide it. They were shown means to by making the January 6th thing. They're pretending they believe the narratives of their patients and criminals when they've been coaching the narratives of the patients and criminals to hide their roles with the like, for example, the dumping spot of a serial killer, even if made up. There are people involved with EMS and with locations and other campuses and locations next to them, involved with the interbranch locations and locations next to it, involved with themselves, their family members, people that have communications with their neighbors, already locked, where communications, uses of other people's names, uses of their fact treatments, they have to hide from what is actually recorded then and now. They're shown this too late because they are fake sophistication, not just fake sophistication. And that's opinions A through Z, because you add your short words and your means by what is hyper-evidential and its conjunction to our syntax nature, and where and how we are identities actually, where and how we are value actually, from being, you had it prevented from being discerned. You got other and told to you in place of the short words and revelations our parents taught as grace, as founding grace, and other nations too, but everyone lost this. Everyone lost the way to interpret, to perceive. Okay, so I'll believe American citizens, this video, American students, you were in a trap. You know it. If you don't, and the ones who pretend they don't, then let me show them. And let me show you. Just say, get this kid a response. See Renaissance. You don't have to type it all, but just say, get Anthony Wall a response. Interbranch prevents writing at their locations. They try to they put fake exceptions. Then they have to hide. Now they have to hide their actually recorded natures. They have to hide their actually recorded, uses of those locations. Way worse than what they put people away for. Exploiting exception nature for where and how they were given immunity from prosecution. They were effectively kept the source of the worst locations, causes of and uses of the overt criminal enterprises, criminal insidiousness, / insidious, insidious. vaccines to teach us things. Thank you. American citizens, if you want to help them, they're separating, make us heard. Get me heard, American citizens. Just share this with one per student or parent or teacher and make sure, because there were more then and now I caught you involved with digital crimes, even sexual and medical, even judicial and police families. My town, police chief Cintron and some Cintrons from Puerto Rico are involved with Omni and various boxing gyms, involved with identity thefts and frauds with people on my street, involved with ties to them too at their houses, involved with Wethersfield police and their families and people tied to them, further involved with their doctors and involved with crimes with them, fake conversations, fake ties to me, and little tricks rolls where where they got involved with my communications with other people and then pretended into databases. So make sure I get their names too. I need the name of the people tied to this Jamie Smith and a David Smith. And then their mother. Their mother's involved with some guy involved with Hartford Hospital, involved with federal crimes with Dr. Dingleberry, Dr. Dewberry, and some people involved with the corner of Church, Town Line Drive and Southstein Highway. That is also involved through time with people at another mobile gas station too. There's a guy named Ken that Ray Cololo, Joe DeMoro, and Eric Jensen sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm that there was men and women involved with court judges and prosecutors and with their families. And there were overt criminal enterprises involved with their families too, and medical families involved with identity thefts and frauds with them. So like there's something to do with the people that run the shopping centers and have something to do with the shopping centers like at Town Line Drive, involved there's a Mike Levine who's also involved with a Jonathan Mayano and those locations near there, and I'm associated with the highway exits, and there's those sensibilities tied to such. He's involved also with people at Central Connecticut State University involved with federal crimes, with evidences, with Paul Zano too, and with this Cololo family brought up by the Wethersfield police confessions too, and other things on the phone. They have roles with this, and then with the Wethersfield fire departments. They have the Wethersfield fire departments distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously as the same ones involved with predicate acts on and off the fire department next to Trinity College and on and off the fire department in West Hartford near Eric Burgess with his mother and father and the relationship to a church down the street from them in that park. Also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Involved with the intelligence community and private people tied to them, involved with various natures of child abuse, identity theft, fraud, slander, falsified police reports, evidence reception, data reception, crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders. Roles also with courts, Hartford courts, with former director of the F.B.I. criminally involved with uses of that park near Millwoods, near West Farms Mall. There's also something to do with the police farms associated with West Farms Mall and Buckland Hill Mall in Manchester, as people involved with the World Trade Center attack from our sides, as people that are themselves a whole bunch of ways different, a whole bunch of ways being and have been used criminally for and influenced, roles with identity theft, frauds instances, and as people on off Trinity College and CCSU, involved with predicate acts, timed intercities, and confessions, and where they've been using that to delay responses from me at the child campuses with the same names involved then and now, with further abuses of the kids through the policing of the campuses too. Overt sexual, medical, and other evidences, crimes against family members and their kids in our faces, letting us discern it because of all that actually tied to what they've actually been using the campuses for and the extra sensitivity towards campuses. They've been maintaining that by maintaining sick reactions to all they've been, to the breaching method. It's all they have, where they have all these fake integrity, identities, the ground styles. Then they just show them they need to hide lie progressions. They show them why and how they have to do so by hurting someone else's correlation nature and means by that, for who they know where they're going to go. You know what I mean? It has nothing, no one can control it, so they control remotely. That's why it's relevant to where and how these how they can pretending that science spoke. Honestly, there are so many proofs that only criminally foreign influence takes on sciences in defenses of themselves speak and have spoken. Awake, CT must break to find the seed. Please read. So, you guys can't speak for passions and emotions. You get involved with other people's business dishonestly, trying to pretend you should give the benefit of the doubt to the police as the ones criminally foreign influenced. They don't have an identity as police. That's a fake police. Make sure I get a response in writing because it's been recorded. You guys have election crime acts rolls with the elections locations involved with these rackets where you prevent me speech right through and other people's speech while you're attaching us to fake speech and the people around us to fake speech. You guys do this, recorded. You have the men and women that you train on off Central Connecticut State University with the police and courts, sickly, distinctly enslaved little lied to victim predators like yourselves. So get off the campuses and hurry up and get a response so I have to keep going deeper into you guys. Rise, rise. Be tried, tribes. All right. Make sure I get a response for the Wethersfield police. Wethersfield campuses, make sure. Maybe get a response for this Emmett too. Roles with fabricating audio and video and the digital crimes, including there are some doctors involved with sexual crimes against little girls since they were little kids. Drugs and medicine crimes. One's supposed to be against that, be using the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie. They have a whole bunch of people involved with Central Connecticut State University, Trinity College, involved with predicate acts with names on and off my street here in Wethersfield, through time connected too. You watch. Make sure, motherfuckers. No, I'm being aggressive because some New York people watch the cartoon, the little rap guy and friends episode. I want you to discern part of my audience as the human beings. I want you to perceive them as real human beings, per science method. Inside the people stacked buildings in New York City, in the cartoon Value Nature Systems version of New York City, that has Sepp, the cartoon character named Sepp, has Reeves speaking to a guy who's one of the guys counter-extorted, where the whole species volume has already been extorted, but now everyone's counter-extorted by a hyper-anti-archetypal criminal enterprise. They are Sepp, Reeves, and Little Rap Guy are all. Little Rap Guy's not in that episode, but with the projects. So Sepp and Reeves are like the people in the projects, counter-extorted. Sickly, distinctly, though, everyone's forced to cultivate their own extortion and counter-extortion. And Little Rap Guy, as the hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, is trying to leverage that to get everyone to discern what everyone can't afford to discern originally and still. It was his evidence that and how when they made treatments about what was left entrenched through criminal foreign influences, hyper-archetypal criminal enterprises, in other words, not just clear criminal enterprise and criminally foreign influences, as each colony was involved with sickly distinctly. There's that one breaching method that each colony, even though there were other possessions of other countries, they sickly non-distinctly were also the possession of the breaching method. The breaching method actually recorded increasingly identity of value of answer / yes to our questions, increasingly denied its significance. So as actors, as black actors, we have to get white actors, and we have to counter the Native American saying, we have to counter that breaching method that knew that we would have to counter as a factory nature, blaming other things, others, ourselves, even when correctly, exactly the way the breaching method needed to hide its roles and to hide what actually was is recorded, with nature demonstrating it. But that's how it was missed by everybody. It is missed by everybody. What is hyper-evidential is that a quality of fact treatment nature has been prevented relative to the causes of slavery, relative to the causes of the Civil War. Bound, I'll gather round. Vaccines, I teach you things below. So Bullion died in 1874. Civil War still on. Come on. 69-year-old man. I have a plan. Nothing is bullying alone. Bullying alone. But exceptions, the exception nature and demonstration of it. If it is. Because it leaves out what is complete. Can only be everywhere at once. And that's only increasingly true. Hyper simultaneous. That's me. That's everyone. That's you. Ooh, ahu. Auzu billah, bismillah too. Vaccines. I teach you things below. Not known. Nobody knew. In other words, so America, you have defenses of religion, tricked, hurt, forced, persuaded, self-value with physical delusions because of the offensively how they are keeping experts calling names and pretending other people have physical delusions, experts who have no ability to speak about what's saying. They're still physical delusions wrought themselves, criminally foreign influence, fact, cheap nature roles, especially the ones with badges, especially the courts associated with these places. You'll see what they did to the elderly homes. They'll use them for themselves, through other motivations too, not just the apparent motivations. Oh, was the money was motivating me? No, it was worse. It made you even worse, evil, entertaining those elderly homes and roles with courts with child campuses like that. And these games with my neighbors' names and their uses of mine, because you sustain these games. So you have the whole bunch of people with the intelligence community involved with this name, Cololo, and with this Lenny Triglia too. He was influenced to pretend to know me years ago. He made an exception to pretend to know me. I don't know him. He's also involved with or the men and women are also involved with uses of a Rich Dombrowski and of a Sal Sevilla, involved with the people further involved with some child abuses, sexual, medical, other wire crime roles, falsified police reports roles, slander roles that are relevant, because this is one of the things that hurt all the locations' names, sickly distinctly, is an identity theft, fraud, slander method. That is a method that is method/S. Everyone has self-value roles, blaming other things, others, themselves too. Nature demonstrating that by breaching method. Slavery is about an identity theft/fraud/slander method that was sickly distinctly against Native Americans A through Z and against colonists A through Z. People in colonists, that includes A through Z, humanity A through Z. That was on this location, because logistically everywhere this human species identity of volume was and is, it was forced to be an identity other than how we are forced to be identity/IES by nature. See, now there has another unnatural grouping So there was something to do with peoples from Wethersfield, Connecticut, and their conjunctions to other states, and their uses of my names behind my back, how they try to pretend exceptions. If you search their minds and souls, you'll know I don't know them, and you'll trace it back to the people involved with the pattern of predicate acts roles on and off the campus is coordinated, because those illusions were used to, as their roles with the rest of the election crimes recorded that Congress was often and is offensively hiding roles with, and pretending passions and emotions and motivations other, because while they know it to an extent only, though, because they were used remotely, leading up to the World Trade Center attack, since leading up to various legal cases, and since leading up to crime scenes, and since roles with those crimes, even with their patients and criminals, roles with them since before they got caught. Relevant to all that is really why and how they don't have time to have quality of fact sheet nature with each case and instance that comes before them. They've been using it to hide how they've been fabricating life progressions. They've been facilitating means and needs to get away with that by using it. The locations are in a trap. So something to do with Carone brothers, Mark Carone, Kevin Carone, and a whole bunch of other boyfriends of a girl that said they shared them together. The other people, I barely know the Mark and Kevin Carone. I mean, I just to know who they are. I know them through other people. They know me through other people. And then you see it and you say you know the person, but you don't know the people. So it's something to do with the three locations with locations next to the state capitol, and their roles with house people with the corners on the South Steen Highway and with the corner of Town Line Drive and the South Steen Highway, as people also involved with the Michael Levine, other people with the Child Abusers Campus, and people involved with a Mr. Neville and the intelligence community, with schools involved with roles with abuses of girls on and off campuses where they had roles with it, where they've been forcing, tricking, hurting, persuading them to roles with falsified police reports, roles with wire crimes, mail crimes, crimes that involve real estate companies, that involve other natures of industries, drugs and medicines crimes, with overt criminal enterprises, the same ones, and private ones, and the people with the medical campuses that are supposed to be against that. Those people and their families have been involved with those things and continue to hide life progressions because their roles by attaching everyone to fake words, fake locations, by attaching the victims of things to fake words about it, what they're going to tell on before they tell on it, if they even tell on it. Till they've been using the reaction of people to crimes to hide what they've been using reactions to people with instances on off children's campuses where they're lying about the nature of relationships between kids, and they're making fake relationships between kids, and they're simultaneously forcing that further through other motivations, natures, needs, interests, only to complicate what actually is causing it, even though all we have to do is discern that and everyone will be happy. They can't afford to follow mandated law now. So how they don't follow mandated law is how name stacking was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, conferred, self-valued by the branches of government as their roles with the child offenders, even if they made it up, the church child abusers. So there's a St. Anthony's Church in Hartford, Connecticut, next to Fox Connecticut News, and there are buildings next to it with people involved with identity thefts and frauds against me, per Enzo Fienzo. And he says that there's an Allegro's Cafe involved criminally, and with houses on and off the state judicial branch offices with them, and with this Kevin Dillon and Anna Dillon involved with real estate crimes and on-off Central Connecticut State University, Trinity College, that were juxtaposed with the roles with the other natures of organized crime at the same time. Also specifically per their roles with falsified police reports and evidences, crimes, methods that juxtapose all these names and roles with that. Name stacking is one of the things that forces child abuses and uses of it roles never told on or told on wrong. Boxing is strong. So how mandated law was prevented is how the news has been stealing my identity and how they've been pretending their motivations and from the backgrounds. So it also has roles. The Connecticut news, television news had played softball with each other through time at Wethersfield parks that are involved with a whole bunch of intelligence community associated with men and women. There are men and women in or as a Mark Carone and Kevin Carone and a Jamie Carone. I don't think they're the same brothers. I don't know. But there's also a Jamie Carone involved with them on off Central Connecticut State University, where they're involved with men and women who have been attaching me to fake locations, fake words, fake relationships to other people, fake natures of relationships to people, other people, and using class placements. They put them in a class with me as one of the ways. They are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Also with Stephen Stocco and a Maria Fazzino, or Maria Stocco, maybe. I reportedly now married to Stephen Stocco. But a whole bunch of people, men and women associated with Stephen Stocco and Maria Fazzino, have roles with predicate acts against me at Central Connecticut State University and other campuses I went to. They have identity thefts and frauds roles. Stephen Stocco's a coward little punk, identity theft fraud kid who I never had a conversation with my life. I called a phone and he called the police. I don't know what he said to them. I asked to speak with Maria, who she sought me out with these confessions. Then people brought him up. You know, she was involved with planting evidences with her neighbors and with this Dillon family and with people on off the state judicial branch offices criminally involved with Wethersfield Pizza and the campuses. And I never saw her on Wethersfield campuses in my life. Mark Violet is one of the persons that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, repeated. Maria Fazzino's involved with them, and his roles with the Collo family that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by a O'Brien family involved with judicial, with executive police forms, and with a former Mayor Gold involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, coordinated into databases, fake things typed. And they coordinated fake illusions, identity thefts, and frauds at locations, and people associated with uses of corners of streets, with confessions when people are going to go by there and stuff like all kinds of things. Vaccines. So they pretend they don't understand people. You understand me? Fix the fake news. Give me something to respond to. You guys wrote the falsified police report, not me. You guys put no writing, and you confess, recorded the different names are involved. You want me to pick a name so you can figure out how you're going to counter it. You have more than one police department criminally involved with you, Wethersfield Police. Here, Intercity. Make sure you get these courts onto one name. There's a Darren involved with confessed, recorded, demonstrated, confirmed. He's forced, tricked, her, persuaded roles with the principal child abusers campus, with digital crimes that have more judges and prosecutors have with him. And with the former Governor Malloy, with locations in East Hartford associated with New Britain Superior Court and other Hartford courts and Middletown courts involved with their patients and criminals before they got caught, and with crimes against innocent people, crimes against kids, with child offenders, child abusers, as people that simultaneously were with their families and people associated with them with the child abuses, also having been involved with elderly abuses, criminally foreign influence, personal uses of elderly homes, as fact, cheap nature involved with them, involved with the locations next to them in relevant ways also, like the 3 spots at the end of the Bone Turnpike. I'd fear God to delay response to me. Give me a response. Now, make sure you guys respond for Wethersfield police and the other nutbags involved. And make sure you respond too. Don't pretend that I called them a name for no reason. Because I told you to respond nicely first. You have to lie about behavior. You can't record the police. You have to make them respond in evidences. You guys are preventing people from using their voice to counter uses of weapons and of poisons criminally. Make sure you pick one name in sequence for your little fakes into Branch, Connecticut. Now, make sure you get me a response. That's obligated to you. Don't pretend if you want to pretend why you're not going to respond to me, put that down here so I can show what's actually recorded. I asked you nicely many times. You made up a lot of things in backgrounds. Make sure Wethersfield parents and kids, Wethersfield kids, students of Wethersfield, make sure you get me a response. I caught them doing this interstate. So if you go to another college and university in another state, they're going to have to hide libel aggressions that were started against you here. They're going to have to self-value them. I'll show you the method that makes this motivated. Self-value there and here, wherever it goes. Everyone stays victims that are reactions in collusion against ourselves. Otherwise, they attach us to fake words, fake locations, fake ties to other people, fake nature ties to people, all at once, too, simultaneously. They won't they offensively prevent proper subjects treatments, proper integrity treatments. They're evidence perception crime predators. They have rules of evidences, crime methods. The news, when they say that the president presented no evidence, when they relevant to themselves simultaneously defending their uses of phrases like the election lie, elections locations like Wethersfield, Connecticut's election locations, and town offices further, and simultaneously further other ways the campuses locations used for elections. Those databases are criminally foreign influenced. All of them are, since before computers. I tell you, I speak for the truth alone. Boxes. What politician is speaking that you think that denies what I said? What judge? What police form? Get them to one name in sequence now and respond for the one switching and forging names in sequence, and make sure they respond to for the why they hate that from Judge Napolitano, because these are people that have sexual cliques involved with the KKK themed, Confederate flag themed military police, with the black ones involved with falsified police reports, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and pretended to perceive prejudice because they're identity theft, fraud, slanders against strangers. You watch them switching and forging names. That's all part of what they've been using the databases for. Make sure you tell me who disbelieves any goddamn thing I said, and make sure I get a response for the confessions the principal child abusers made to me with others. They hid it by fabricating emails, Wethersfield parents. Get ready to get upset, and get ready to watch the ones getting upset, sickly, wrong, and collusion too, because they're keeping, that's one of the where you're going to see. You have parents mixed that are also into Branch, and they're involved intercities with campuses that kept needing to hide libel aggressions, hide uses of what they heard from other people's and from investigations. Even cases have been used to plant predicate acts and lies roles in other cases that have nothing to do with that, and that roles with instances where the ongoing identity thefts and frauds against everyone sickly distinctly are manifest. It's all recorded. I tell best belong. Box six. I teach you things. So MSNBC, Fox Connecticut, Fox News, and MSNBC, please follow mandated law. Please stop pretending, or please don't believe that your differences from the other parties or the other networks are rights to prevent me or anyone else needs and means to respond to your sources recorded attaching me and having attached me and others through administrations to more and more fake words. This is worse than extortion. These are people also involved spreading lies and identity theft frauds against me with the Wethersfield police people tied to them on off boxing gyms I went to intercities, as the ones with the courts criminally involved with them too. Same ones involved with overt criminal enterprises, sexual circles, involved with the digital crimes and sexual circles and uses of that, even with the judges involved, even female judges involved with sexual crimes against little girls and digital upskirt natures and uses of that are juxtaposed needs because there are identity thefts and frauds, illusions from background and time. I do not know this Tom Perone. I don't know the woman who out of nowhere, I didn't even have time. She couldn't have liked me for real because I just walked out of a car. She wanted to come with me. I didn't even know Tom Perone and that girl associated with Tom Perone. And it's something to do with Tom Perone and the Kerr family who went to a church school that my father went to. And there were people spying on my father, or people using truths about my father's life for lies. These people are offensively roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and pretending my father was involved with that. As people involved with federal crimes, with federal criminals proven on and off job sites, having been roles with foreign and domestic families, overt criminal enterprises, drug selling, and as the people involved also with the doctors supposed to be against that with federal crimes with kids on and off cases. That's what's actually recorded. Local 230 has roles with sexual circles and medical offenders and co-defendants of former director of the F.B.I. associated with their family members, like the daughter of John LeConte, involved with people on and off Trinity College and on and off Central Connecticut State University, is involved with identity thefts and frauds against me and against my father. Speaking, switching names and roles with the former director of the FBI, co-defendants himself as lawyer, switching names and forging names with deans, uses of their roles with themselves and their family with all kinds of natures of organized crime, of child abuse, identity thefts and frauds, and other motivations juxtaposed. In other words, that's why they made all those confessions to me and then pretended I had communication. I had no response to it. In other words, with Dean Judd and his roles with the Hartford court and the Britain courts, with various natures of drugs and medicines, crimes and abuses of kids, way worse, on and off with locations with the drugs and medicines crimes, and with foreign and domestic families with the locations right next to campuses, as their roles with uses of the predicate acts on the campuses, at other campuses and at locations, those lie progressions, they contribute into them. Make sure I get a response for Connecticut interbranch now, intercities too, now, and the campuses. Make sure you give me a response for the campus. There were more people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with Emmett and with locations next to and on the Southstein Middle School and other campuses in town further involved. Now, New Britain courts, Middletown courts, and Hartford courts have further roles with the predators on and off the campuses, and with the houses involved with identity thefts and frauds instances relevant, and their positions next to the campuses, and how that was motivated is also recorded, how that is relevant too. Has something to do with remote uses of fire departments also involved. Planting evidences on the north side of my house, identity theft, fraud, slanders behind my back since I was a kid. Make sure you get them on paper too. Boo! Boo! You fucking cowards. Fake.